This White House press conference today started off crazy and then just went off the rails. Because today you had President Trump hosting Salvador and President Nayib Bukele at the Oval Office, where they celebrated the deportation of immigrants from the US to El Salvador. Deportations mostly of Venezuelan migrants, which critics among other things have called inhumane because they're now in a high security prison that have been likened to a forced labor camp. Right, a move that also many have called illegal because a judge ordered a plane carrying migrants there to turn around and come back, with the White House then ignoring them and Bukele posting, "Oopsie, too late." And so what you saw at today's event were some reporters taking the opportunity to ask both men about that, and specifically Kilmar Abrego Garcia, right, that Maryland man whom the White House previously said was mistakenly deported due to an administrative error. Reportedly, he's a father of 3 with no criminal record, and a court order shielded him from deportation. And so with that, you had a federal court ordering the White House to facilitate and effectuate his return, but we saw the White House resist, saying that it would do so if the Supreme Court ordered it to, which is what happened. You had the Supreme Court upholding the lower court's order. But then what you saw is that on Sunday, the White House argued in a court filing that it was still not obligated to actually help the man get back home, which then brings us to today, where you had someone asking Bukele directly if he would let Abrego Garcia go.
I mean, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
So you can release him inside El Salvador?
Yeah, but I'm not releasing, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country.
Right, so you have Bukele claiming he doesn't have the power to return Abrego Garcia, the White House claiming it doesn't have the power either, and Attorney General Pam Bondi saying,
"That's up to El Salvador. If they want to return him, that's not up to us."
Right, and also during this, you had White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller claiming that Garcia was an MS-13 member, that he was illegal, and that the White House was obligated to deport him.
It's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens as a starting point. This issue was then, by a district court judge, completely inverted, and a district court judge tried to tell the administration that they had to kidnap a citizen of El Salvador and fly him back here. That issue was raised to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful, and its main components were reversed 9-0 unanimously, stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the President could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13.
But then you had Secretary of State Marco Rubio seeming to suggest that the president can deport people whether the courts agree or not.
The foreign policy of the United States is conducted by the President of the United States, not by a court. And no court in the United States has a right to conduct the foreign policy of the United States.
And you had Stephen Miller immediately agreeing with that. And so you had many saying it's unclear whether he thinks they've been okayed by the judiciary or the judiciary's opinion just doesn't matter. But when a reporter sought clarification from Trump himself, this happened.
Mr. President, you said that if the Supreme Court said someone needed to be returned, that you would abide by that. You said that on Air Force One just a few days ago. And they said that it must be facilitated.
Why don't you just say, isn't it wonderful that we're keeping criminals out of our country? Why can't you just say that? Why do you go over and over? And that's why nobody watches you anymore. You know, you have no credibility. Please go ahead.
And then when the next reporter asked how many illegal immigrants he wants to send to El Salvador, he replied, as many as possible, and even seemed to suggest that US citizens should go as well.
We also have homegrown criminals that push people into subways, that hit elderly ladies on the back of the head with a baseball bat when they're not looking, that are absolute monsters. I'd like to include them in the group of people to get them out of the country, but you'll have to be looking at the laws on that, Steve, okay?
And when a reporter asked him to clarify if he meant US citizens, he was like, yeah, duh.
Yeah, that includes them. What, do you think there's a special category of person? They're as bad as anybody that comes in. We have bad ones too.
And so for a lot of people, this felt like watching America slowly becoming a police state, and now even citizens, not to mention legal immigrants, are scared. Hey, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this clip from the full Philip DeFranco show. And also, a big thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring our Clips channel. Turn your passion into profit over at squarespace.com/Phil, or use the QR code. Because whether you're launching a business or a lucrative side hustle, your website is your digital business card. It's the only space where you control the story, no algorithms or distractions. And with Squarespace, it's so easy because they got a ton of stunning professional templates with drag and drop editing that makes site design incredibly simple. No coding required. So get started for free at squarespace.com/Phil, or scan the QR code on screen and use code Phil for 10% off when ready to launch. Squarespace.com/Phil.